the weight of your responsibilities, your relationships, your ambitions. It all presses down on you like a suffocating blanket. You try to shake it off, but the more you struggle, the tighter it clings. You tell yourself to push harder, to care more, to fix everything that feels broken. But what if the very act of caring, of trying so desperately to control the uncontrollable, is what's keeping you trapped? What if the key to freedom lies not in holding on, but in letting go? This is the unsettling paradox at the heart of Michel de Montaigne's philosophy. A 16th century French philosopher, Montaigne spent his life exploring the human condition, and his essays reveal a startling truth. The more we strive to control our lives, the more we lose ourselves in the process. He wrote, "The greatest thing in the world is to know how to belong to oneself." But how do we belong to ourselves when we're so busy trying to belong to the world? How do we find peace when our minds are constantly at war with the chaos around us? Consider this. You're standing in the middle of a storm. The wind howls, the rain lashes against your skin, and you're desperately trying to hold on to something, anything, to keep yourself grounded. But the harder you grip, the more you realize that nothing is stable. The ground beneath you shifts, the objects in your hands slip away, and you're left standing there, exposed and vulnerable. Now imagine letting go. Imagine releasing your grip and allowing the storm to rage around you. What happens? The wind still blows, the rain still falls, but you're no longer fighting against it. You're no longer trying to control the uncontrollable, and in that moment, something shifts. The storm hasn't changed, but you have. You found a strange, unexpected peace in the midst of chaos. This is the essence of Montaigne's philosophy. When you stop trying to control every outcome, every detail, every moment, everything falls into place. It's a counterintuitive idea, one that challenges everything we've been taught about success, happiness, and fulfillment. We live in a world that glorifies effort, that rewards those who push harder, strive longer, and care more. But what if this relentless pursuit is actually the source of our suffering? What if the key to a meaningful life lies not in our ability to control, but in our willingness to surrender? Think about the last time you were truly at peace. Was it when you were juggling a dozen tasks, worrying about 100 different outcomes? Or was it when you let go of all that, when you allowed yourself to simply be, without judgment, without expectation, without fear? Montaigne believed that true freedom comes from embracing the uncertainty of life, from accepting that we cannot control everything, and that we don't need to. Life, he wrote, is a rough, irregular course, and it is folly to try to smooth it out. But how do we reconcile this with our innate desire for stability, for certainty, for control? How do we learn to stop worrying when everything in us screams to do the opposite? This is the great question at the heart of Montaigne's philosophy. What would happen if we stopped caring so much? What would happen if we released our grip on the things we cannot control and instead focused on the one thing we can, ourselves? It's a question that forces us to confront our deepest fears, our most ingrained habits, and our most cherished beliefs. It's a question that challenges us to rethink what it means to live a good life. And it's a question that, if we dare to answer it, has the power to transform everything. But before we can answer it, we must first understand why we care so much in the first place. What is it about the human condition that drives us to cling so tightly to the things we cannot control? What hidden forces shape our behavior, our emotions, our very sense of self? And how do these forces keep us trapped in a cycle of worry, stress, and dissatisfaction? To uncover the answers, we must delve into the hidden problem at the root of our suffering. A problem that is as old as humanity itself, and yet as relevant as the thoughts racing through your mind right now. The storm is still raging, but now, instead of fighting against it, you're standing in the eye of the hurricane, watching as the chaos swirls around you. You're beginning to see that the storm isn't the problem, it's your resistance to it. And as you take a deep breath and loosen your grip, you feel something shift. The weight begins to lift. the tension begins to ease. And for the first time in a long time, you feel a glimmer of hope. But this is only the beginning. The journey ahead is long, and the path is fraught with challenges. Are you ready to take the next step? Are you ready to confront the hidden forces that have been shaping your life? And to discover what lies beyond them, let's begin. To understand why we care so much, why we cling so desperately to control, we must first confront a fundamental truth about human nature. We are wired for survival, not peace. Our brains are not designed to let go. They are designed to hold on, to anticipate threats, to solve problems, and to avoid danger. This instinct served us well in the wild, where a moment of carelessness could mean death. But in the modern world, where physical threats are rare and existential anxieties abound, this same instinct becomes a prison. We are no longer running from predators, but we are still running from failure, from rejection, from insignificance. And in this endless race, we lose sight of what it means to truly live. The problem is not just biological, it is deeply psychological. Carl Jung, the pioneering Swiss psychiatrist, once observed that neurosis is always a substitute for legitimate suffering. What he meant was that our minds often create unnecessary worries as a way to avoid confronting the deeper, more painful truths of our existence. We obsess over trivialities, what someone said to us, what might go wrong tomorrow, whether we're good enough, because it's easier than facing the void. It's easier than asking the big questions. Who am I? What do I truly want? What is the meaning of my life? These questions are uncomfortable, even terrifying, so we fill the void with noise. We care about everything because we're afraid to care about what really matters. But this avoidance comes at a cost. Friedrich Nietzsche, the German philosopher who wrestled with the darkest corners of the human psyche, warned that he who has a why to live can bear almost any how. Without a clear sense of purpose, we become slaves to our anxieties, chasing after external validation and fleeting pleasures in a futile attempt to fill the emptiness inside. We care about what others think of us because we don't know what to think of ourselves. We care about what to think of ourselves. We care about achieving success because we believe it will give us worth. But deep down, we know it won't. And so, the cycle continues. We care, we worry, we strive, and we suffer. This suffering is compounded by the societal forces that shape our lives. From a young age, we are taught that our value is tied to our achievements. We are rewarded for being productive, for being ambitious, for being in control. But this cultural conditioning comes with a hidden price. It teaches us to equate self-worth with external success, and it leaves us feeling perpetually inadequate. No matter how much we achieve, it's never enough. There's always more to do, more to have, more to be. And so, we become trapped in what the French existentialist Jean-Paul Sartre called bad faith, a state of self-deception in which we deny our freedom and responsibility, choosing instead to live according to the expectations of others. But perhaps the most insidious aspect of this hidden problem is the way it distorts our perception of reality. Cognitive biases, such as the negativity bias and the illusion of control, keep us locked in a cycle of worry and stress. The negativity bias, a survival mechanism that causes us to focus on potential threats, makes us hyper-aware of everything that could go wrong. The illusion of control, the belief that we can influence outcomes that are largely beyond our power, keeps us striving for the impossible. Together, these biases create a distorted view of the world, one in which we are constantly under threat and constantly failing to meet our own expectations. And yet, despite all this, there is a part of us that knows there must be another way. Viktor Frankl, the Austrian psychiatrist and Holocaust survivor, wrote in his seminal work Man's Search for Meaning that everything can be taken from a man but one thing, the last of the human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances. Even in the face of unimaginable suffering, Frankl found meaning by choosing how he responded to his circumstances. His words remind us that, no matter how trapped we may feel, we always have a choice. We can choose to stop caring about the things that don't truly matter. We can choose to let go of the need for control. We can choose to focus on what is within our power, our thoughts, our actions, our attitudes. But making this choice is not easy. It requires us to confront the deepest layers of our conditioning, to question the beliefs and habits that have shaped our lives. It requires us to face the void, the existential uncertainty that lies at the heart of the human experience. And it requires us to trust in something greater than ourselves, whether that be the natural order of the universe, the wisdom of our own intuition, or the simple fact that life, in all its chaos and unpredictability, has a way of working itself out. This is the hidden problem. We care too much because we are afraid to face the truth of our existence. We cling to control because we are afraid to let go. But as long as we remain trapped in this cycle, we will never find the peace we so desperately seek. The storm will continue to rage around us, and we will continue to fight against it, exhausting ourselves in the process. But what if there was another way? What if, instead of fighting the storm, we could learn to dance in the rain? What if, instead of clinging to control, we could embrace the freedom of surrender? These questions lead us to the next stage of our journey, a journey into the unseen consequences of our need to control, and the profound insights that await us on the other side. The storm is still raging, but you're beginning to see it in a new light. You're beginning to understand that the problem isn't the storm itself, but your resistance to it, and as you take a step closer to the edge, you feel a strange sense of anticipation. What lies beyond the storm? What happens when you stop fighting and start flowing? The answers are closer than you think, but first, you must confront the unseen consequences of your need to control. The storm is not just outside of you, it is within you. Every time you cling to control, every time you care too much about outcomes you cannot dictate, you feed the tempest. It grows louder, more chaotic, more chaotic, more chaotic, more consuming. And yet, you barely notice its toll. Not because it isn't there, but because it has become so familiar that it feels normal. This is the first unseen consequence of your need to control. It becomes invisible, like a fish unaware of the water it swims in. You are unaware of the psychological and emotional burden you carry. But just because you don't see it doesn't mean it isn't shaping your life in profound and often devastating ways. Consider this. Every moment you spend worrying about the future or ruminating on the past is a moment stolen from the present. The present, the only moment you truly have, slips through your fingers like sand, unnoticed and unappreciated. This is the second unseen consequence, the erosion of presence. The philosopher Arthur Schopenhauer once wrote, "We seldom think of what we have but always of what we lack." In your quest to control the uncontrollable, you lose sight of what is right in front of you. The beauty of a sunset, the beauty of a sunset, laughter of a loved one, the simple pleasure of a deep breath. All of it fades into the background, drowned out by the noise of your anxieties. But the consequences go even deeper. Your need to control doesn't just steal your presence, it distorts your perception of reality. Cognitive science reveals that the brain is not a passive receiver of information, but an active interpreter. It constructs your reality based on your beliefs, fears, and expectations. When you are consumed by worry, your brain filters the world through a lens of threat and scarcity. You see problems where there are none, dangers where there is only uncertainty, and failures where there is only growth. This is the third unseen consequence, the creation of a self-fulfilling prophecy. By focusing on what could go wrong, you inadvertently make it more likely to happen. Your fear becomes your reality, and then there is the toll on your relationships. When you're obsessed with control, you project your anxieties onto others. You micromanage, you criticize, you demand perfection, not because you want to hurt them, but because you are trying to alleviate your own fears. But the result is often the opposite of what you intend. People feel suffocated, judged, and unappreciated. They pull away, leaving you feeling even more isolated and insecure. This is the fourth unseen consequence, the erosion of connection. In your attempt to control the world around you, you push away the very people who could bring you comfort and joy. But perhaps the most insidious consequence of all is the way it shapes your identity. When you tie your self-worth to external outcomes, your job, your relationships, you'll become a prisoner of circumstance. Your sense of self becomes fragile, dependent on things that are inherently unstable. A bad day at work, a critical comment from a friend, a missed opportunity, any of these can send you spiraling into self-doubt and despair. This is the fifth unseen consequence, the loss of self. In your quest to control the world, you lose control of the one thing you truly have power over, yourself. And yet, even as these consequences accumulate, you remain unaware of their true cost. Why? Because they operate in the background, shaping your life in subtle but profound ways. Like a slow-growing vine, they wrap themselves around your thoughts, your emotions, your behaviors, until you can no longer distinguish between the vine and yourself. You become so accustomed to the weight that you forget what it feels like to be free. But there is a way out. To see it, you must first confront the full extent of the problem. You must shine a light on the unseen consequences and acknowledge their impact on your life. This is not easy. It requires courage, honesty, and a willingness to face uncomfortable truths. But it is necessary, because only when you see the problem clearly can you begin to solve it. Imagine this. You are standing in a dimly lit room. The walls are covered in mirrors, but the glass is dirty and distorted. You catch glimpses of yourself, but the image is fragmented, unclear. This is your current state, a distorted reflection of who you truly are. But as you begin to clean the mirrors, the image becomes clearer. You start to see yourself, not as the world has defined you, but as you truly are. And in that clarity, you find the first glimmer of freedom. The storm is still raging, but you are no longer fighting it. You are beginning to see it for what it is, not a threat, but a teacher. It is showing you the cost of your need to control, the toll it has taken on your life. And as you stand there, watching the chaos swirl around you, you feel something shift. The weight begins to lift. The tension begins to ease. The tension begins to ease. And for the first time in a long time, you feel a glimmer of hope. But this is only the beginning. The journey ahead is long, and the path is fraught with challenges. Are you ready to take the next step? Are you ready to confront the hidden forces that have been shaping your life, and to discover what lies beyond them? The moment you decide to stop fighting the storm is the moment everything changes. It's not that the storm disappears. It doesn't. The wind still howls, the rain still falls, and the ground beneath you still feels unsteady. But something inside you shifts. You realize that the storm is not your enemy. It never was. Your enemy was your enemy, was your own resistance, your desperate need to control what cannot be controlled. And now, as you loosen your grip, you feel a strange sense of liberation. You are no longer a prisoner of the storm. You are an observer, a participant, a dancer in the rain. This is the beginning of your rebellion. But rebellion is not easy. It requires courage, discipline, and a radical shift in perspective. It requires you to question everything you've been taught about success, happiness, and fulfillment. It requires you to let go of the beliefs and habits that have shaped your life, and to embrace a new way of being. This is not a one-time event. It is a lifelong practice, but the rewards are profound. When you stop caring about the things you cannot control, you reclaim your power, you rediscover your freedom, and you begin to live a life that is truly your own. The first step in this rebellion is to confront your fears. Fear is the root of your need to control. It is the voice in your head that whispers, "What if something goes wrong? What if you fail? What if you're not good enough? These fears are not irrational. They are deeply human, but they are not insurmountable. The key is to face them head-on, to acknowledge their presence without letting them dictate your actions. This is what the existentialist philosopher Jean-Paul Sartre meant when he wrote, "Freedom is what you do with what's been done to you." You cannot control your fears, but you can choose how you respond to them. You can choose to let them paralyze you, or you can choose to move forward in spite of them. The second step is to cultivate presence. Presence is the antidote to worry. When you are fully present, you are not thinking about the past or the future. You are fully engaged in the here and now. This is easier said than done, especially in a world that constantly pulls your attention in 1,000 different directions. But it is possible. Practices like mindfulness, meditation, and deep breathing can help you anchor yourself in the present moment. So can simple acts of attention, noticing the feel of the wind on your skin, the sound of birdsong, the taste of your food. These moments of presence may seem small, but they are powerful. They remind you that life is happening right now, not in some distant future or idealized past. The third step is to redefine success. For most of your life, success has been defined for you by your parents, your teachers, your culture. But what if success is not about achieving external goals? What if it's about living in alignment with your values, your passions, your true self? This is the radical idea at the heart of Montaigne's philosophy, that the greatest achievement is to know how to belong to oneself. To rebel against the need to control is to reclaim your own definition of success. It is to measure your worth not by what you have or what you've done, but by who you are. The fourth step is to embrace uncertainty. Uncertainty is the natural state of life. No matter how much you plan, how much you prepare, how much you care, you cannot predict or control the future. This is not a flaw. It is a feature. Uncertainty is what makes life dynamic, unpredictable, and alive. When you stop trying to eliminate uncertainty, you open yourself up to possibility. You become more adaptable, more resilient, more creative. You learn to dance with the unknown rather than fear it. The fifth step is to practice surrender. Surrender is not the same as giving up. It is not a passive resignation to fate. It is an active choice to let go of what you cannot control and to focus on what you can. It is a recognition that you are not the center of the universe, that you are part of something larger than yourself. This is what the Stoic philosopher Epictetus meant when he said, "Some things are in our control and others are not." The art of living, he argued, lies in knowing the difference and acting accordingly. But perhaps the most important step in this rebellion is to cultivate self-compassion. For too long, you have been your own harshest critic. You have held yourself to impossible standards, punished yourself for every mistake, and berated yourself for every failure. But this is not the way to freedom. Freedom begins with kindness, with treating yourself with the same compassion and understanding you would offer a friend. It begins with recognizing that you are human, that you are imperfect, and that you are doing the best you can. And it begins with forgiving yourself for all the times you've tried to control the uncontrollable. This rebellion is not easy. It requires you to confront your deepest fears, to question your most cherished beliefs, and to let go of the habits that have shaped your life. But it is worth it. Because on the other side of this rebellion is a life of freedom, of presence, of authenticity. It is a life in which you are no longer a prisoner of the storm, but a dancer in the rain. The storm is still raging, but you are no longer afraid. You are beginning to see it for what it is. Not a threat, but a teacher. It is showing you the cost of your need to control, the toll it has taken on your life. And as you stand there, watching the chaos swirl around you, you feel something shift. The weight begins to lift, the tension begins to ease, and for the first time in a long time, you feel a glimmer of hope. But this is only the beginning. The journey ahead is long, and the path is fraught with challenges. Are you ready to take the next step? Are you ready to confront the hidden forces that have been shaping your life and to discover what lies beyond them? The storm has not stopped. It may never stop, but something has changed. Not in the storm, but in you. You no longer see it as an enemy to be defeated or a problem to be solved. You see it as a part of life, as natural and inevitable as the sunrise. And in this shift of perspective, you find something you never expected: peace. Not the absence of chaos, but the presence of clarity. Not the end of struggle, but the beginning of understanding. This is the ultimate truth. When you stop worrying, everything falls into place. Not because the world has changed, but because you have. This truth is not something you can grasp with your mind alone. It is not a concept or a theory. It is an experience, a way of being. It is the realization that life is not something to be controlled, but something to be lived. It is the understanding that you are not separate from the storm. You are part of it. And in that realization, you find a profound sense of belonging. You are no longer fighting against life. You are flowing with it. This is what Montaigne meant when he wrote, "The greatest thing in the world is to know how to belong to oneself." To belong to oneself is not to isolate oneself from the world, but to find one's place within it. It is to recognize that you are both a part of the chaos and a witness to it. It is to embrace the paradox of being human, that you are both insignificant and essential, powerless and powerful, finite and infinite. This realization is not the end of the journey, it is the beginning. It is the foundation upon which you can build a life of meaning, purpose, and joy. But it is also a challenge, because the world will not stop trying to pull you back into the storm. The voices of fear, doubt, and judgment will not disappear. The pressures of society, the demands of others, the weight of your own expectations, all of these will continue to test you. But now, you have something you didn't have before. A deep, unshakable knowing that you are enough, that you have always been enough, and that you always will be. This knowing is not something you can achieve or attain. It is not a goal to be reached or a prize to be won. It is a truth that has always been within you, waiting to be discovered. And the moment you discover it, everything changes. The storm is still there, but it no longer has the power to define you. You are no longer a victim of circumstance. You are the author of your own story. And in that authorship, you find a freedom that is both exhilarating and terrifying. Because now, the responsibility is yours. No one can tell you how to live, what to care about, or who to be. The choice is yours, and yours alone. But this freedom is also a gift. It is the gift of authenticity, of living a life that is true to who you are. It is the gift of presence, of experiencing each moment fully and completely. And it is the gift of connection, of seeing yourself in others and others in yourself. This is the ultimate truth, that when you stop worrying, you open yourself up to the fullness of life. You become a vessel for love, for creativity, for joy, and in that openness, you find a sense of purpose that transcends all understanding. This purpose is not something you can define or articulate. It is not a job, a role, or a mission. It is a way of being, a way of moving through the world with grace and gratitude. It is the recognition that life is not a problem to be solved, but a mystery to be embraced. And in that embrace, you find a sense of peace that is both profound and simple. It is the peace of knowing that you are exactly where you are meant to be, doing exactly what you are meant to do. Not because you have all the answers, but because you have stopped asking the wrong questions. The storm is still raging, but you are no longer afraid. You are standing in the eye of the hurricane, watching as the chaos swirls around you. And in that stillness, you find something you never expected: joy. Not the fleeting happiness of external success, but the deep, abiding joy of being alive. It is a joy that does not depend on circumstances, that cannot be taken away. It is a joy that comes from within, from the knowing that you are part of something greater than yourself. And in that knowing, you find the courage to keep going, to keep growing, to keep living. This is the ultimate truth, that when you stop worrying, everything falls into place, not because the world has changed, but because you have. You have stopped fighting the storm, and in doing so, you have found your place within it. You have stopped trying to control the uncontrollable, and in doing so, you have discovered the freedom of surrender. And you have stopped caring about the things that don't truly matter, and in doing so, you have found the courage to care deeply about what does. The journey is not over. It will never be over. But now, you have a compass, you have a map, and you have the courage to take the next step. The storm is still raging, but you are no longer afraid. You are ready. Ready to live, ready to love, ready to be. And in that readiness, you find the greatest truth of all, that you are, and always have been, enough. Let this be your guide. Let this be your truth, and let this be your rebellion. The storm is still raging, but you are no longer afraid. You are ready, ready to live, ready to love, ready to love, ready to be. And in that readiness, you find the greatest truth of all, that you are, and always have been, enough.